Tell me when it's 11.
You mean 10?
10. Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
I have a new listing I want to. It's a coming soon.
Coming soon. My biggest nightmare. You and Becky. Becky's stressing out over stupid coming soon. She's got to quit real estate and don't make it coming soon. Put it on the MLS if you wouldn't have to worry about this. Just put it on there. She has a lot going on.
All right, we're ready when you are.
He's out now.
How are you doing? Good. Okay, we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started. We have a lot of different topics we're gonna cover. None of which are too earth-shattering. A number of the forms that were promulgated last fall became official March 1 or whatever. So I just want to make sure that we cover them. Basically, a lot of it had to do with when the buyer has a credit issue. Now we must provide the information in writing to the other side. Okay. So if you on your third-party financing addendum on page 2 here, it's added this kind of lingo that, like I said, it's been there for a while. It just became official today right here. In the event that the property doesn't qualify on the appraisal, you must provide the information, a written statement from the lender regarding why you didn't get it. So the typical I got with CAF, and they have a typical sort of kind of lender form that says buyer did not get financing because credit, down payment, employment history, job, 1099 versus salary, whatever it might be or whatever. Now we're going to have to provide this information to the other side in writing in order for it to be effective. Yes, Martha?
It only specifies though if the house doesn't appraise.
No. Let's stay on buyer for 1 second. If the buyer fails to qualify, the lender has to give us the reason why the buyer. I'm not talking about the property first. Let's stay on the buyer for a moment. Buyer has 10 days to get financing. Buyer does, option period was 7 days. You're in day 8, 9, or 10. And now you're going to terminate within your rights. You now have the responsibility to provide the written reason why from the lender why the buyer didn't qualify. See, go back to the page 2 here. You can terminate, but you just need to provide it in writing, not just the form anymore that we're terminating, because and go to the next, the termination. If you terminate and you're the buyer cannot obtain information, then you're going to have to also include the reason why the buyer didn't qualify if they ask for it. Buyer didn't qualify because of X. Now, if you're in the option period, most of us, and the way we've always done it, give them 7 days for an option period, 7 days for financing. We never had to do that because you can just terminate in the option period, but you have the unrestricted right to terminate, provided that you paid for it. Okay. But if you're terminating because of financing outside of the option period, you're going to have to give a reason why the buyer, why they didn't get financing from the lender. It could be an email. This just happens to be a nice form that TAP has. Buyer failed to qualify for the term of the loan under the financing addendum from Chase Bank. That's fine. So you're just going to give the information. Now, that's the buyer. Let's say we are the buyer and had a 10-day for the buyer financing, we had 10 days for the option period, and we're 4 days before closing. Okay, we've been under contract for 45 days, and on the 41st day, something comes up with the appraisal. You have the right to terminate 3 days prior to closing if the property itself doesn't qualify any longer for whatever reason. In a hurricane zone, that can't get flood insurance, can't get windstorm insurance, didn't appraise. You have the right to terminate. You just have to deliver. The buyer has delivered to seller the lender's written statement setting forth the reason for the lender's determination, and the seller has the right to a copy of the appraisal now. Okay?
But we have a document for the appraisal.
We have a document for the appraisal we're going over next. Okay. But it's adding this stuff about in writing. Buyers delivered to the seller, lender's written financial statement setting forth the reason for the lender's determination. You're gonna have to provide it in writing now. You can't just outside of the option period. In the financing period, or for the property, 3 days prior to closing. Okay, let's go to the financing addendum. We can go to the appraisal one. All right. Yes, we have this addendum for the appraisals. Now we're over here. We hopefully use this form when we got under contract. We attached this little deal. Is it subject to appraisal at the sales price? Is it subject to appraisal at whatever number y'all can negotiate? Or is it not subject to any sort of appraisal? And in any scenario, you're still going to have to provide the information in writing or whatever. If you're terminating because of the appraisal, the other side has the right to see the appraisal. If you're using that as a reason to terminate.
If you don't
Like
include
the
that
buyer.
form, it's still you can still terminate. the
Absolutely you
appraisal,
can.
so you don't
That's
have to include that.
That's right. This is if you're the seller and I'm selling 737 Columbia for 500 and someone offers 575,000 for it. I don't want it to appraise for 575. I want it to, I'm listing 2203 Oxford later today. It's $1 million. It ain't gonna appraise, folks. It just isn't gonna appraise. I'm not gonna accept any offer. On paper, it's worth $800,000. My seller's only gonna take $1 million. I'm not gonna take any offer where it's subject to appraisal more than about $800,000. People are gonna want it. They're gonna buy it. They're gonna buy it knowing that it's fabulous and I can't get an appraisal. So I'm going to check the little box on 2203 that I'm not gonna accept anything more than about $800,000. You buy it or not, I don't care. I could be an asshole and say not subject to appraisal at all, but I'm saying you can get a loan. I just don't think you can get an appraisal for $995,000. They've spent too much money on a lot of things that appraiser's going to give it absolutely no credit for, and I'm not going to take any offer subject to anything close to the asking price. I'll take $800,000, maybe $850 or something. You want it? If you want it, the seller is going to instruct on the MLS. Seller will not accept any contract subject to appraisal greater than $850,000. We're going to put it in the agent remarks. And if someone submits me a little offer and it's subject to appraisal, it's fine. We're just going to put this little addendum, $850. It appraises for anything less than $850. You know, the lender reduces the amount of the loan due to the opinion of the value. The cash portion of the sales price will be increased by the buyer. They're just going to put more money down. So the buyer could waive all the financing. Once again, maybe we're going to finance it, but it's not subject to appraisal. So the people who bought my house, 205 Balin Avenue, $3 million, it was not subject to an appraisal. They were going to get to appraisals. They were going to finance. They were just going to pay the difference. So we checked the little box that it wasn't subject to an appraisal. Doesn't mean they can't get financing, but that they couldn't get an appraisal. It just wasn't subject. I wasn't sure I was going to get a $3 million appraisal or not. It happened to get a $3 million appraisal. Yes.
So you said the sellers at 22 of your Oxford, they want about $1 million, right?
Yep.
And but are you suggesting that the conversation you've had with them, they already know they're not going to?
Yes, it's not going to appraise.
Because you've already said, look, this is.
There's not enough comps for me to be comfortable to think that the quality of the caliber of that house, it's the same size as 1032 Ashland I just sold for $769,000, and I'm asking the exact same size house, $995,000. What do I think we're really going to get $995,000 on appraisal? No, but someone's going to love that house, and they're going to want it. I mean, I bought a Donald Judd last week or whatever it was. I couldn't get it financed. I can't go to the bank and borrow the money for a Donald Judd. I just wanted the Donald Judd. I just paid the difference for whatever it financed for, you know? So it's the same basic thing in the world. I know it's not going to price for $1 million.
What does the seller say? You can't tell.
Seller wants to sell a house, and we know that we're pushing the boundaries on the financing. Everyone's going to love the house.
Okay.
If they want to buy it, I just am not sure that we're going to be able to get an appraisal for that. There's too many 25 and 33 foot wide things selling for $275 a foot. How am I going to get $375 a foot? I'm going to get $375 a foot because somebody wants that corner, those porches, those built-ins, those light fixtures, those plumbing fixtures, and that hardware. She works for Noel Furniture. You know what, the Knoll desk that you guys are getting in your new office are $2,000. I can buy a desk for $99. I paid $2,000 for Knoll because I wanted Knoll's name, right? All the furniture is from Knoll. The couches were $4,000. I can go to Wayfair and buy the exact same knockoff for $395. But I didn't do that. I paid for Knoll couches. This is the same concept. Somebody wants his house,
They
it's
want
just
that
not
house.
subject to financing.
What's
So-
the address?
2203 Broadway.
Oxford.
It's in a suite. So, but if they choose, the purpose is of these three forms to notify you, you're not going to have to get the appraisal. The appraisal generally goes to the buyer, and the buyer's going to have some responsibility. If you're using the appraisal to get out of the contract because it didn't appraise, now you're not just going to be able to say this property didn't appraise. They've made it clear that you're going to have to provide a copy of the appraisal to the other side. That's the biggest difference here. We used to probably already do it, but we didn't have anything in writing that said we had to. Now we have it in writing that says if it doesn't appraise, you have to give it to the other side. It's not fair. Let's say you were the seller and Ashley Martini terminates because the property didn't appraise. He wasn't required to give me a copy of the appraisal. They just gave a letter from the lender, which could have been his best friend or fraternity brother, that said the property didn't appraise. Now you at least have to have, the seller should have a right to see the appraisal. Even though these things are very subjective, you can, I mean, all the time we get one that appraises for X and later we get one that appraises for 100,000 more. They're very subjective. Doesn't mean it's not worth it. It just means under those conditions. 635 12th Street for 2.1 million, which those people like that house better than they like mine. It didn't appraise. It didn't appraise. Cindy Burns from Mark Turner. But my seller wasn't going to sell that for less than that. They didn't even ask for a reduction. They didn't provide us a copy of the appraisal because they didn't ask for a reduction. They just said it didn't appraise. And I said, well, fine, send me the termination. I'll put it right back active. They didn't bother sending the appraisal. They just bought it. They paid the difference. Most high-end properties, you do just pay the difference.
Right.
Nice properties are probably not going. The appraisal world, you know, we've had this talk all the time. It's to the medium. It's all, you know. You can only finance a Camry. You can't finance a BMW. The BMW, what's the difference between the Camry and the BMW? They're the exact same size. If we measured price per square foot or cubic inch, they're the same, right? Somebody wants a Camry. Somebody wants a Ferrari. Somebody wants a Maserati. They're just going to pay the difference. Yeah, whatever. Clear enough about providing it in writing.
So why would seller need appraisal information? What would that do?
Because, you know, if the buyer used the appraisal to terminate,
Right.
so, I mean, the buyer should know for sure that they weren't just making it up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there should be some proof that the buyer's appraisal didn't appraise. And we never had anything in writing beforehand. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't appraise the next time. It just means this buyer's appraisal didn't work. The seller should have a right to it, I think, anyway.
Would the seller have to show that appraisal to somebody else?
Does not belong to the buyer. It's just an information. I mean, it rained yesterday and I take a picture of it, doesn't mean it's raining today, right? It's yesterday. It's just that information belongs to that buyer's lender. And the next person probably wasn't gonna use that buyer's lender for that appraisal. Nope. Okay, questions about that? In writing, certain amount of time. Always confusion from these people who want to use 30 days for the financing period or something. Don't do that. Don't let them do that. Make the buyer choose a lender in a reasonable amount of time and get the buyer approved. Buyers should be approved before they go and look at houses. The property may not be, okay, I got that. But the buyer, there's no scenario that these buyers would really need more than 10 days. Or the seller needs to know that the risk. So a typical one might be, I'm coming to Memorial, I've got a job, I'm not gonna find out I get my job until April 1st. I'm gonna try and buy a house March 1st, but I may not get my job. Wouldn't you wanna tell the seller, we don't even know if he has a job yet?
Yeah.
You wanna take that offer? I would say get the job first and come back to me. If it's still available, I'll sell it to you. Why would the seller wanna take it off the market for someone who's not qualified to buy a house? A buyer can get qualified in a day. I mean, it doesn't take that long to approve someone these days. So give them a reasonable amount, because what they want to do, the typical person wants to shop 42 different lenders over there, you know, until the day at the end of the option period, and then wants to try and, you know, do something. 10 days is plenty for a buyer to get approval on the third-party financing addendum. They would need to justify to me why they needed more than 10 days, and we would need to explain that to the seller. Doesn't mean that the property is going to appraise, doesn't mean that it has to have insurance by then. There's still plenty of reasons that you could get back out of the contract 3 days before closing. All you gotta do is tell them 3 days before closing, it can't insure it or whatever.
No, why don't we put 0 if they've already pre-approved?
I think that's perfect. Or just don't even check the box, it's fine. That's what I do all the time. My buyer is approved. We don't need buyer approval. He is approved for a loan. The property is
So
still
you put
protected.
0 in there.
I put 0 all the time.
What if they
Or
want
in
to
it.
shop around to other lenders?
Let them do it in the option period, whatever time, make them decide by the time of the option period or a day or two after if they're stressed out. So a typical 7-day option period, 10-day financing is fine. A more attractive actor, yeah, I mean, if I'm trying to get a property, I'm gonna put 0.
Okay.
My buyer's approved. He's not gonna shop you around. He's not gonna change lenders tomorrow. He's already got a lender ready to go. That would be an attractive position if you represented the buyer. And if you were the seller, that's what you want. You don't want someone to have a long financing period.
So just 10 days.
10 days. 10 days for buyer approval. Don't need any more than that.
So I think the agents experience a lot of pushback
You
from
do.
other agents.
Oh, for what reason? Why
representing
is the
your
buyer done? Have they selected a lender or not? You sent me a letter from Chase Bank or TAF or Jennifer Hernandez or something. Are they gonna use Jennifer or not? Did you use this to bait me knowing you're gonna use another lender? Are you gonna use this one or not? If you're not, that's all that form is saying. It's giving you time to choose a lender. If you've chosen one, why do you need more time? What are you doing? Are you dating me or somebody else? I don't understand why they would need any more time. The only reason they would need more time is if the agent is not educated or ignorant
I agree.
and thinks that it applies to the property. It doesn't apply to the property. There are plenty of addendums already in the third-party financing addendum that talks about, their rights. So go back to the third-party financing addendum. Buyer is approved or not. Buyer is approved, great. Now, so this is the same thing. So it's buyer had that however much time. But the property, you've got, just so long as you do it 3 days before closing, you may terminate by giving notice of the termination and a copy of what the problem is regarding to the property. This is, it's not the buyer, it's the property approval. The buyer approval, I applied for a loan and I have approval for a loan. If you have a credit card, you get a credit card that has $2,500 limit on it, you can charge $2,500, you just can't charge $2,501. They either have approval or they don't. Get approval in a reasonable amount of time, has nothing to do with what I'm gonna buy over here. If I try and buy with my $2,500 credit limit, something for $5,000, I'm gonna get rejected, right? That's the same thing it's saying about the property. If the property doesn't qualify, you're gonna be able to get out of here, provided you give them reasonable notice. Now, if one of those things is the appraisal, we're gonna have to give them a copy of the appraisal. Okay, moving on. No more questions about that. In writing, certain amount of time frame.
What was the form that you showed just before this one came on?
This is the notice of buyers. This is the appraisal. So now we're gonna make it subject to, if it is subject to some appraisal, which we're assuming it was, we think you ought to use this form in conjunction to the appraisal. What is it? Now, if you don't use this form, it's subject to the appraisal. If you put 20% down, the price is $500,000, the property must meet value of at least $500,000. You don't have to use this form. Who wants to use this form? The seller. The seller wants someone to use this form and tell me what it is. So in Rutland, I don't want it subject to financing. Either nothing or something reasonable. And this is giving you the options of what that can be. Not subject at all. Buyer waives the right and is going to buy it regardless of the appraisal. Buyer's going to buy it if it appraises for $850 versus $950, or I'm going to be hell bent and make sure that it appraises for exactly the list price. And wouldn't you want to know that? Especially if you're pushing the boundary a little bit. Now, it automatically is this if you don't do anything.
And present that up front with the contract.
Yeah, so it depends on who you represent. If you're the buyer, if you represent the buyer and you want to make your offer attractive, you don't want to make it subject to, so every time you have something more than the list price, use the damn form. Okay, that'll be the easiest one. I just told the world that 5737 Columbia was worth $500,000, okay? Becky and Hannon Properties and 17 others offered more than the list price. If they're offering more than, I just told my seller it was worth $500,000, and you offer $575,000, I'm not gonna make it subject to $575, I'm gonna make it subject to $500. That's the most I would make it subject to. In those scenarios, we got plenty of people offering, so we didn't make it subject to anyone's financing. Whatever the price was, just take it or leave it. My price for $400, it's fine. So when there's a multiple offer situation, the seller wants to do this. If you're the buyer in a multiple offer situation, your buyer's gonna buy it regardless of what it appraises for, then yeah, this makes your offer way more attractive. Either not subject to financing at all, you can check that box and never need it, or make it subject to some low, we're going to borrow the money because we have a finance major who wants to use his 3% money in his Merrill Lynch account, but it's not subject to financing, they're really just using their own credit. So there's lots of scenarios the seller wants it, and plenty of scenarios the buyer would want it. Okie dokie. Moving on. Hydrostatic test again. Same thing. You have a house that's built with a slab, older than about 20 years. The world really wants a hydrostatic test or some sort of inspection of the plumbing system. So it's very common that if you have this sort of scenario, Melissa's Houston Avenue over here, you know, that was an old building and new building built on top of it, or whatever. It's fairly common that the buyer would want to do some sort of test. So, but we need permission to do this sort of thing. And so you have to figure out who's doing what. Who's going to pay for the damage in the event that there's a hydrostatic test, because it just puts it right on out there. So if you're the seller with a house on a slab built from 1980, just let's go over this form right from the very beginning of the contract, not once we're under contract in the option period, where now the person gives you the form and says, we're going to do a hydrostatic test. We all should have known they were probably going to do a hydrostatic test, because everyone's going to recommend a hydrostatic test. The realtor and every inspector on earth is going to recommend a hydrostatic test, because they want them to sue the plumber later when something messes up, not the inspector. So the inspector's going to tell them, get a test, get a test, get a test, get a test. Defer liability to somebody else. So who's going to pay for the damages right up front? Is it going to be the buyer? Well, of course it's going to be the buyer. The seller's never going to agree to pay for the damages from a hydrostatic test that a buyer's plumber performed, right? So we might as well just discuss this all up front. Very initial offer. You represent the seller, send this form right on back to the buyer's agent and say, submit this form with your offer. If you're the buyer, submit the form right with the offer and explain it to the buyer. Most likely, everyone's going to advise you to do a hydrostatic test or some form of test like this. These tests can perform damage if you do the test. You understand? You do any test. Your inspector walks in the house and falls through the attic. The buyer was responsible for that damage. It wasn't the seller. I mean, this buyer can't create damage to someone's house. It's no different scenario here. It's just you apply a certain amount of pressure to pipes, you're likely to have some sort of damage.
Bill.
Yep.
You or Brandon helped me out with Cascade, and y'all gave me the name of somebody who didn't do the hydrostatic test, did his little non-invasive horrible test, and it was great, and he found stuff. So we ought to discuss the fact that, as you just said, other options. That guy was fantastic. Then we had to fix it, and yeah.
There are other options that we think are better as a firm, but this form, since it's promulgated, gets used in our industry all the time. We need to know how to use it.
But there are other options.
There are certainly, I think, better options.
Better.
I think if you have if you have any house that's not brand new, that's had any remodeling or is old, you're likely to find a problem with a hydrostatic test. You apply more pressure than normal to a plumbing system, you're probably going to be able to detect a leak. It doesn't mean you have a normal problem because you don't normally have that much pressure. If I take the fire hydrant, I put it right here on my mouth and it blows in there, water's gonna come outside my ear. It doesn't mean I normally have water coming outside my ear because I don't normally have that much pressure, right?
It's not putting it under pressure.
It's
Filling your mouth with water.
When you
If
Google,
water comes out your ears
you
at that point,
Google
there's
this
a
deal
problem.
on the TREC website. You can go to TREC and you can pull up hydrostatic test. It says abnormally high pressure on the TREC website. So I reviewed it today because the legal reference of hydrostatic test is abnormally high pressure according to the Texas Real Estate Commission. I agree that you shouldn't be able to detect a leak under normal circumstances, but according to the real estate reference of it, it's abnormally high pressure is what constitutes hydrostatic testing. So I just Googled it today.
Will you know right away if damage has been done as a result of that test?
Not normally or whatever, because the water could be just a hairline fracture, going to a bathroom, and 7 hours later, the water's under the wood floor and it's sitting there for a day or two. And then day 3 after the test, with the humidity, the floor's buckled in the bedroom adjacent to your Meyerland ranch style house or whatever.
So why are
Normally,
we
the pressure
allowing
gauge would show
them?
it.
Do I now?
Pressure gauge that inspector will use will show there's a leak there.
Yeah.
If it happens afterwards or before.
It's just the damage. If it's just a nominal amount of a leak, you won't know. It's not like water's going to spew up from the toilet.
So it
It's
kind of
gonna-
makes it hard to come back to that, right? Sometimes it can kind of be hard to
Well,
come back and
it-
say, hey, this is as a result of that test you just did.
My typical rule is the inspector does an inspection of a vacant house at 1212 Fairview, and a day before closing, we go and do our walkthrough, and the floors were all buckled because the inspector, there was a leak at the dishwasher that wasn't early detected at the time of inspection, but the water got out from under the dishwasher and it buckled all the floors in the kitchen. You would know that till right before. So that was caused by the inspector, right? His inspection caused that leak of the deal. You just didn't detect it until 21 days later. It happens all the time.
Well, why are we allowing TREC
Wow.
to have a form that gives the prescription of a hydrostatic test when we know it's gonna put pressure on it? Why can't we say, okay, Michael Bush is a professional drain, and that's the guy's name if you want?
This is what we've got at TREC, so I'm just
Well,
going
yeah,
over
but
what
you
we have
got
at
it
TREC.
now.
And those other tests are
Well,
more
you can,
expensive.
the seller can say, no, like you said.
Absolutely, they can, the buyer can terminate.
Right.
Melissa's seller wanted to say no to the hydrostatic test on Houston Avenue, and my reasonable response is the next buyer's gonna want a hydrostatic test, so why are we terminating this guy? If you don't like the terms, then terminate it. You know, don't allow it, but anyone that buys what was a drugstore in 1930 that's now a house, you don't think somebody ought to be concerned about the plumbing underneath the kitchen? Sure they are. I just want you to be aware of the form. Yes, I think there are much better things than hydrostatic test. It's not me you have to worry about when you're co-oping, it's somebody in another firm who's gonna use this firm.
What is that better thing?
You know, it's a less invasive pressure where you're really you're capping it and seeing if you're not applying the pressure. You're scoping, you're doing the thing that you're looking for in a ranch style house is how have they done remodeling, so they moved an island and they moved the sink in 1983 and they put it together with some plastic thing that, you know, broke in 1998, but you just don't notice it till later. Or they recently redid all the floors with new tile floors to cover up, I believe that was there. Or it's the tree branches that get you on trees close to ranch style houses, and that's what's generally getting you. But so you can scope, you could do a camera to see if there are roots in there or whatever, be a better way. I mean, I believe you're going to detect a leak in hydrostatic test of houses built in the 40s and 50s and 60s. I think if you do the test, you're going to find the leak. I think what you explain is you don't have that kind of pressure in these houses or whatever that would cause any real harm. You're leaking air at every window. The houses leak things all the time. We don't think anything of it. If it didn't leak, we'd all die from the gas that was in there. Right, they're designed, so just because it could leak doesn't mean that it's a problem. Yeah. Okay, what else did I have up there?
Next, we had this.
Was there some reason I had this up here? Something changed on this one too. Oh, let's do this. So, earnest money, remember we're cracking down on this earnest money. Earnest money has to be there quicker than ever. And what happens if we don't deliver the earnest money on time? Seller can terminate the contract. The seller has the right to terminate it. The problem that I see that we keep getting into is that we have a contract, earnest money was due, whatever, the 3 days or whatever it is. They don't deliver it till day 5. Now we want to hang it over everyone's head that you didn't provide the earnest money on time, and the seller had the right to terminate, the seller had the right to terminate, the seller had the right to terminate. Well, the seller's right to terminate was the period of time from when it was due and when it was received. So the seller has to notify you that you're terminating the contract before we got the earnest money. So if you don't notify the buyer that the contract's terminated on day 4, and they deliver the earnest money on day 5, the seller's right to terminate went away. You either have to exercise it right quick, or your option to terminate is gone away once you've received the earnest money. To see where it's getting us is, earnest money delivered on day 5. Somebody wants to go back and say, well, we could have terminated the contract. Your contract wasn't valid because you didn't get the earnest money in on time. Not true. That's not a true statement. What's true is the seller had the right to terminate it right quick, and they either did it or they didn't. When they didn't do it, and you received the earnest money day 4, 5, or 6, this right to terminate the contract went away. You can't tell them on day 21 all of a sudden you failed to deposit the earnest money on time. Now, if you still don't have the earnest money, you can do it anytime until the earnest money is received, after the period of time of which it was due. Yes, Drew?
Okay. What, is that gonna be different, or is the option fee also gonna fall under that rule that if I don't have it by 5 p.m. on the 3rd day?
Option fee is not under this deal, okay? Okay, so the seller had the right to terminate from the period of time in which the earnest money was due, and if you don't receive it, you cannot notify, okay? Once you get the earnest money, you lose that right. If the option fee wasn't delivered on time, you don't have an option period.
Okay, so there's no catching up,
The buyer didn't have the right, didn't have the unrestricted right to terminate because they didn't pay for the period of time. Their parking ticket was due on this date, and they didn't pay it on that time. If you paid that amount, you're still gonna be delinquent and have a warrant under your arrest, right? You gotta pay the penalty. It doesn't matter if you pay it on day 5, you didn't have the right to terminate. Now, it doesn't mean that people won't continue to negotiate, and maybe you just then use your financing period, or you find some other way to get out of it. But you only have the right to terminate if you paid for it during the period of time of which you had to pay. Your options.
It's too, I just can't, the language here is too small for me to read, so I can't tell. It's expressly that once you get the earnest money, then that deal is over. Correct.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I was.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. That was a little odd, but we got this one. These 2 scenarios were good ones. Okay, moving on. Any other questions?
Alright.
I don't think there was anything.
Let's do this.
We can talk about 402 Columbia if we want to. Does anybody want to? Which is an affordable housing project that's under consideration for being built into the Heights area.
Yes.
Okay. I would say that there is a huge push to build affordable housing throughout the city, especially in neighborhoods where they're thriving, okay? Not just in neighborhoods that are poor. You only keep poor people in poor neighborhoods. That doesn't get poor people out of neighborhoods. Now, at the exact same time, I will tell you, the mayor doesn't believe in the Jeffersons moving on up to Uptown over here. They shouldn't be forced to move to a high rise in the Galleria in order to have a high opportunity neighborhood. You ought to have high opportunity neighborhoods any number of places. But building more affordable housing, go back to the Say Yes deal, for middle income people like Selena and Thomas and Frank and Terrence and my son Richard, all of those people qualify for this affordable housing, which is 80% of the median income, which is about $41,000 for a family of 1, and it rises. And so we have this huge push, go down here, for more affordable needs for a fireman and a nurse and a chef and a teacher and a veteran and an EMT worker and a secretary and a receptionist and a school nurse, the first-time teacher. I mean, we're not talking about homeless people over here. We can talk about homeless people if you want to, but it's really designed to fight discrimination about affordable housing And to make it clear that we're talking about people who are basically earning $30,000, $32,000, $36,000, $38,000, they deserve some type of reasonable housing. And our city is shy 400,000 to 500,000 units versus the needs out there. Okay, we're shy about 400,000 units. Some will be done by the private sector, some by the federal government, some by public-private partnerships or whatever. So we're trying to build more housing spread out throughout the city. They are spread out. If you go to the little map, they're all over the area. They're not just in, predominantly poor neighborhoods over here. But so here's a movement to build something at 402 Columbia, where it was already controversial because they tried to put a hotel there, and the neighborhood, including myself and Aaron, helped fight the hotel that was going to go there because it was going to be pretty high. 402 Columbia is right here on the interstate. It's right here, whatever, and it's right by this 400-unit Camden apartment complex and this new 200-unit hotel complex, which is on the feeder road. It's adjacent to it. Is a commercial tract that's been commercial for 60 years. And it's likely to remain commercial. It's not reasonable today to think that this commercial tract, the value of the land is so high that we're not going to be able to buy a lot for $600,000 and put a $1.5 million house next to an apartment complex, next to a feeder road, and right next door to a 200-unit hotel, right? No one in the economy thinks that we're really the best use of that is a single family house. Everyone would love a single family house. You know what we'd all love? Let's make a park.
Right.
Why don't we have a dog park here? That's nice. Why don't you tear down your house and give us a dog park? You're not going to. Star, we'd love for you to tear down your house and provide a dog park for the city. Your neighbors would love you, except it's not realistic. You're not going to do that with your house. You're going to tear down your house and provide a park for the people in Columbia and the 13 block? No. This person has the right to use their land, so what's it going to do? The developer that's proposed applied for a federal tax credit and had a ranking system, and the city ranked them, and the ranking of it was good. It met the criteria. It's close to major interstates, it's walkable to things where people can work, there was transit, it's a high opportunity neighborhood. It's a thriving neighborhood where you have a shortage of affordable housing. So it met the ranks.
When you say affordable, do you mean single family?
Go to the numbers. This is what I mean when I mean affordable. For this particular deal, there are 60 units, 75% or 45 of the 60 units would be for people, I sent it to you on the one.
Is it a condominium or?
No, this is the part, but so if
It's a,
Richard, who made $33,000, you can make up to $41,950 if you're one person. The average person isn't one person in this deal. Do you know who the average person is? This is a single mother.
with one child.
One child or two children over here. So here you can make $53,000. You can be a teacher recently divorced with 2 kids, and you need a place to live. This is where you can stay or your household for. They're not big enough. You have much more than that. But I mean, yes, you could be Ginger, teacher, Richard, logistics coordinator, or so this is what you can make and qualify to live in this complex.
What's the least you can make?
Yeah, do it.
What's the least you can make?
You can make whatever you can. I mean, you can make less. I mean, but if you have 0, how are you going to pay for the rent?
Section 8?
No, these aren't Section 8. There are some Section 8 things out there. This shows you what the average rents were down there, I believe.
Okay, so
that's
they'll be
so
paid,
funny.
it's not a mortgage, it's a.
This is a
just an
rental. We can
apartment.
talk about mortgage in a second. But the studios are about $800. The 1 bedrooms are about $950. The 2 bedrooms are about $1,250. There's a whole ranking of what it is on one of those other things.
Oh, there are.
Here you go. This is a little deal. There are 254 of these properties in the inner loop. Okay. There are 41,000 low income. There are 13,000 Section 8, which are the rentals. We have 300,000 people on a waiting list for Section 8 vouchers. 300,000. We release about 1,000 a year of new ones or whatever. 56% of the population in the city lives in a rental unit. More people rent than own here. The average size is 2.53 of who's renting today. Out of our 2.2 million people deal, 814,000 units here. The median income in Houston, Texas, of someone that rents is $46,187 in 2018. The average person, so the median rent in these deals is $873. It's about based on over 30% of your income. How many people pay more than 30% of their income? And about 50% of our city pays more than the national average to rent an apartment, even in Houston, Texas, or whatever. Okay, so you can make, $3,800 a month or whatever, and still qualify to rent in one of these deals over here. Okay, 47% of the people pay more than 30% of their income for housing.
What was the website we were on that had the information about who these are?
Houston housing, you can Google housing and community development or whatever, City of Houston. Now we're just talking about the rental for just a moment. We'll come back to the purchase in a second. So 402 Columbia, commercial property, been commercial. The neighborhood doesn't want this. They don't want this project. And if they protest loud enough, this developer has said, I'm not going to move into a neighborhood where the neighborhood bitch about me. I'm just not going to do it. We'll just go someplace else, which they could. They have agreed in writing to a neighborhood, what's it called?
Good neighbor agreement.
Good neighbor agreement, which limited the size to 60 units, limited the size to 4 stories, created a park on the 2 vacant tracts of lots to the north, gave $50,000 to the Heights Association for improvement to parks, will improve the infrastructure and the streets. They will be a good neighbor. This is what they put in writing.
Make it look like it fits in the historic district,
That's
that
right.
sort of thing.
They've agreed to do this. In their good neighbor agreement, they presented to the neighborhood. He still doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I'm just giving you the information. But I want to be realistic. If this 4-story unit who's providing a park on 13,000 square foot of land with art in it and $50,000 to the neighborhood and infrastructure improvements, if this doesn't come, then you're likely to get what on that tract of land? A 16-story apartment complex or another hotel that's greater than 150 units. And there is no ability to stop people from a reasonable use of their land. So if it's a $3.6 million tract of land, what do we think is really going to go there? It's going to be 6 houses. It's going to be something that can pay the $3.6 million for the land. The only way to justify that price is to get very tall, which would be way worse than the 4-story, 60-unit affordable housing project, right? Which would provide housing for people who work at Cristino and at Cultivari and who work at Hello Lucky and who work at, Walgreens and CVS, and we need some place for these people to live in our neighborhood to have a thriving, mixed kind of neighborhood. Not everyone can afford $3,000 for a rent at 7th and Yale. We need some rental options for Josh. He wants to be able to live in the neighborhood. That's what this is getting us. So I'm just a realist. This goes away. What you can get in exchange for it could be much worse.
Mm-hmm.
They're not coming here though, it's unpersonal. Yep.
When I was in DC and we were talking about the housing policy forum, and that was the debate between Barney Frank and Jeb Henslinger. The consensus at this time now seems to be that we don't try to help poor people buy houses, but we try to improve and offer more affordable housing opportunities, which could be rentals like this or Section 8 housing.
Yes.
And it looks like even at the top, that's the direction we're going.
We have plenty of units. Avenue CDC has units spread throughout neighborhoods that's based totally on income. You make 0, you pay 0.
Yeah.
You make 10,000, you pay 30% of your income. Whatever you make that month, you pay 30% of it, on the first of that month. So we have some housing for people without anything. We have some housing for people who make up to 80% of the median income. So we certainly have some vouchers for rental assistance. Not easy to get these days, but they're out there. Now, what we're trying to do, so a new program we just announced, it was in the papers that for purchasing, we have the ability to create some affordable housing. There's plenty of projects out there, and they're based on you earning 80 to 120% of this median income. You don't have to earn less than 41,000. You can earn up to 120% of the median income. And we have down payment assistance where you can qualify to buy a house about from $179,000 to $249,000 houses where we pay 6% of their closing costs. We pay $30,000 for their down payment, and they buy a house. So, and we do that, and we're building a fair number of those houses even today, although we'll never get caught up. The problem with that scenario is that affordable house, the good and the bad, is that when it appreciates to $350,000, we sell it to the next one, and it was no longer an affordable house. Okay, so every year that we're adding 500 affordable houses, we're losing 500 affordable housing. We're never catching up in that scenario. But those people are generating wealth. Brandon's first house was that exact same scenario when he bought a little house. He went through the program, he qualified, he was my assistant, he made $30,000 a year, he got down payment assistance, he lived there for 2 years, he sold it, which was great. Brandon did make money after 2 years. The problem is we no longer had that affordable house in the affordable housing stock. So we've created a community land trust. We're starting with 1,200 houses over the next year. That's the goal. And basically, the city, the community land trust, owns the land forever, 99 years, then we renew it. And the people just buy the house. Okay, so you have a $179,000 house. We own the land for the $100,000. You buy the house for $80,000. You must live there a certain amount of time. Your maximum appreciation is 1.5%. Okay, you're going to sell that house in 3 years for 80,000 times 4.5% or whatever. You're not going to get rich on that scenario, right? You're never going to create great wealth. What it is doing is taking the people who are Josh, who's renting that apartment over there, and he pays $800 a month, and next year they jack Josh's rent up to $1,100 because the property taxes went up. Josh either has to move or he has less money. This scenario is almost like subsidized rental. They own it, but the payment stays the same, so they're not forced out of their house. They have minor appreciation. They pay $50 a month to rent the land. They pay $50 a month into a program that helps manage these properties so that we can ensure that they stay maintained for future generations. And those houses owned by the Community Land Trust will always be affordable. We'll always sell them. And you hope that 80% to 120 of the median income continues to go up so that the house was 80,000, now it's 90,000. Everyone's income went up proportionally about the same. So we're going to start with 1,200 houses in the next year in the city, and hopefully we'll add to that.
Where are they?
They're spread out equitably across the city.
Okay.
Going to be all over. I mean, it has to be reasonable. We have this discussion all the time. The city can buy one lot for $500,000, or it can buy 100 lots for $5,000, which is better, you know. But you don't want people only in the poorest neighborhoods, so you have to have some mix. The houses are cheaper where the land is cheaper, so the land is cheaper in Acres Homes and in Denver Harbor and Cashmere Garden and Sunnyside, and spread out. The closer you are to inside loop, we get some from tax foreclosures, we get some from demolition liens, we get them from any number of sources there. So that community land trust will be done in other cities. It's about a 30-year-old program nationwide. We'll see how that works. It's not great appreciation, but it provides stability in home ownership.
And in fact, that there's a cycle.
There's a ribbon cutting today. I've been to about the last 15. They're cute little, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 3-bedroom, 2-bath houses that range from 1,100 square feet to about 1,600 square feet. They can kick out that house for about $149,000. They give them $30,000 down payment assistance. With the closing costs, the payment's about $800 a month for your new 2-bedroom, 2-bath, or 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. The payments range from about $800 to about $1,200.
And then how are taxes handled? Is
Yeah.
there
Well,
a
in the
cap on
community
tax?
land trust, the land isn't taxed. So the affordable housing projects, their taxes, by $149,000 tax on $149,000. If you're the community land trust, the land isn't trust. It is owned by the city, so it's exempt from property taxes.
Wow.
You're just paying taxes on the improvements, which does make it more affordable. It's just a new program.
Wow, that's nice.
It's gonna be nice. It's not. in the big picture of affordable housing, it's just one of the many wheels that we have. It's not the solution for everyone. You don't want poor people to always remain modestly poor. Most people's wealth, they didn't marry a kinder, they made money on their houses, right? We all made money on our houses. So you don't want to keep people from making money on houses, but you got to find some way to keep the housing stock affordable.
And
Summer rentals.
And keep it in the trucks.
Yeah. So trying to build more houses is better than a high concentration of 300 units, and really trying to build these smaller complexes where there's a mix of affordability, some market-based, some affordable. I mean, some tied to affordable, and some, you know, a little mixture of both. And they're going to be in a lot of neighborhoods, not just poor neighborhoods.
The person who purchased those homes, can they rent them?
No, they can't. No. And we do foreclose on it. It's not like, I mean, it's just the same scenario. Not everyone can make their $800 payment. We've given them counseling. But they don't pay for it. The entity, whatever, forecloses on them, and we put it back into the housing stock. So, interesting. Questions about 402 Columbia? I just want you to know.
Is that a done deal?
No, there's absolutely no done deal.
So what
Absolutely no
happened
done deal.
last night?
And that last night, no one even came to discuss 402 Columbia. They discussed the apartments at 6.5 in Oxford. Was there any discussion at 402 Columbia?
No, I mean, it was the neighbor saying the same thing over and over again. That was it.
Yeah.
The developer wasn't there. They're going to wait and see what happens with their tax credit application. It'll be months before.
Yeah, be July before you probably know.
And did we tell the neighborhood about the community meetings in April?
Which community meetings in April?
Well, they announced that the community meetings about this, and it's the Texas housing whatever.
No,
gonna
this is
have
the
meetings in April about all these projects.
no. This is the only one they care about.
Yeah,
It was
they
hard
only
enough to
care
get
about
them to
the
show up. Yeah.
Oh, I know, but
Okay, let's keep going.
Okay. This leads perfectly to opportunity zones.
Yeah.
Can you email that?
You
we
can
can.
email
Yeah.
anything you want.
Mhm.
Okay, let's talk about opportunity zones for just a second, so you at least have some idea. Remember, we had talked before based on the, do we have a Kinder Foundation deal with high
Sure we do.
opportunity neighborhoods? These deals, which we shared with you before, was a study that was done, funded by the Kinder Foundation. There were a lot of people that participated about these neighborhoods that were likely, the most likely to face gentrification, displacement, and rapid redevelopment. And it was based on percentage of home ownership, crime, what poverty rates, health issues, foreclosures, delinquent taxes. I mean, it's studying a whole group of things to figure out where are the vulnerable neighborhoods that are likely to change. River Oaks probably does just fine. It ain't gonna get much different from what it is, right? We know what happens there, we know, but what you don't know is where are these other neighborhoods and what do they look like? And we've been discussing this, even at the sales meeting or whatever, we brought it all up again. But if you look, the thing about it, you're getting that?
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't really matter.
Gentrified 1990 to 2000, gentrified
Brown
2000 to
Just
2010.
get to it. But it shows you the areas that we were talking about that were the most likely to be redeveloped. You look at Acres Home, it's the least dense area in the city. The highest number of tracts with absolutely no house on it. Often it's been in the family for 50 years, someone died, you know, Mamie gave it to Pappy and Pappy gave it to somebody else. They don't have clear title. Nobody's paying the taxes on it because it's owned by 16 different heirs. Ultimately what happens is the way to clear up the mess is the city forecloses on it. Now we have clear title or whatever, and we can do something with it. So these were the areas which we've been talking about. You know, here's the Heights and our little area here, and you're talking about these areas that were most likely to see rapid redevelopment because they're cheaper, because there's not much dense development that we, you know, and not everyone wants to be the urban pioneer. You're not going to go there and build $500,000 houses. You're going to go build less expensive houses. But that's where the land is cheaper to begin with. So you tie this sort of information that we've already been talking about for a couple of years, and the fear is that you're rapidly, changing the characters of these neighborhoods. And then through the Tax and Jobs Bill of 2017, through the Trump administration, they were trying to find a way to defer capital gains taxes. We're pretty familiar with the 1031. You sell your fourplex in Florida, and now you want to go defer the taxes by not paying taxes on it. You put your money into the 1031, and you bought a like-minded property, got you to move your money to some other deal, and you deferred your taxes until you were retired or living on some other income versus if you're a doctor, you're making $1 million a year. You don't want to pay your capital gains. You want to wait till you're living on your annuity. It's $80,000 a year, right? And then defer the taxes then. So we identified, the governors of each state identified opportunity zones, which were basically areas where the income was 80 to 120% of the median income in that area. And you can see where they basically are. They line up fairly closely to what the ones the Kinder Institute identified as high opportunity neighborhoods became opportunity zones, where individuals can defer any capital gain, the sale of your stock, the sale of your annuity, the sale of your partnership, the sale of a property, not your income. I make $1 million, I want to defer my income. That didn't work. You could invest in these areas and over time defer your taxes or eliminate your capital gain or eliminate them altogether. The total rules have not all the way come out yet, but an example would be someone who bought a piece of land for $200,000, they sell it for $1 million 20 years later, they want to defer their tax on that gain, and they can come put it over into a fund into one of these other areas, and over time, not pay any taxes on that gain, which would be lovely, right? That's what a lot of people are going to want to do. Big, the REITs, these things that are invested in these apartment complexes work, understand, because they build an apartment complex, they get it filled up, they have a certain cash flow, then they can convert those to condominiums. That is the master plan. That's the mosaic. That's the riparian. That's how those things sort of work. These same entities that are flush with billions of dollars are going to go into these areas and they're going to buy up a lot of land and they're going to do something with it. And when they have an appreciation, they're not going to have to pay taxes on it, which can be very positive for a neighborhood that hasn't had a lot of investment into it, right? So it can be positive. The negative is that we take $8 land and the billionaire funds go over there, they buy up all the land, displace all the people, build high-end condominiums 5 years from now, and we just have more places for rich white people to go, right? That wasn't necessarily in the city's best interest or those people that live in that neighborhood. The tax structure does not take into account social ills or what happens into neighborhoods whatsoever. This is purely just an investment strategy. What the cities can do is try and steer people into areas and get the right thing. If HEB goes into 288 and Old Spanish Trail, where there's never been a grocery store built in 30 years in that neighborhood, and we can give them an incentive to build in that area, they buy some land, get appreciation value over time. They don't have to pay tax on their capital gain on their land or whatever. And we got a grocery store, good for everyone. We solved the food desert, community got some lettuce for a change, HEB got to make some more money, so they'll do it again the next time. It can work, provided that we entice them the right way. On the sheer surface of it, it won't do any good if the city doesn't entice people to do good. There's not enough money in these projects for you to say, I want you to do the right thing. Please, instead of making 20%, make 2%. Come on, Mr. Billionaire, go and do that. That ain't gonna work. We gotta be realistic. We're going to have to do something to get them to do the right thing, where the city's going to have to offer some sort of incentive, or the public-private partnerships will have to work so that we can get a 7, 8, 9% return on duplexes, on retail stores that go into Cashmere Garden or one of these areas that's an opportunity zone. The main gist of what I want you to know is that over the next few years, I see significant capital infusion into these areas, not just funneled by us realtors saying, go buy a house over here, Ginger, because it's cheaper. I want Ginger to go buy a house over here because it's cheaper, but I want her also to know that I need HEB and Google and Microsoft and Greenberg and Braun Enterprises, and Steve Random, and some of these other developers to go over here also. And they're going to go because now they have a tax savings here versus the Heights. They can they can sell their Heights project at Heights Mercantile for $100 million, where they paid $10 million. And the tax on their $90 million, which would have been, $18 million. They don't have to pay taxes on that if they'll take their money over here and keep it a certain amount of time. It will still appreciate at a rapid rate. So now they've made new appreciation. They don't pay tax on that either. So they deferred their $18 million and got to make a lot more money and not pay any capital gains on that when they sell it or get out of that later. Billionaires can make a lot of money, and it can really transform some of these areas.
But I'm correct in assuming HEB is not gonna go there until there are enough people there. I've never
The
known
same
that.
thing, but okay, so if they go to
Am I right?
23rd and Shepherd and they have to pay $30 million for that acre of land, and I'm the city and I can give them an acre of land for 49 years for free. Of course, we're
The
gonna do
city
that.
can do that.
The city sure can. It's in the best interest of the city. It wasn't being taxed now. Let's put HEB there instead of a vacant tract of land we were already mowing.
Okay.
So let's give HEB a $30 million tract of land for $1.
Yeah.
Let them build a $5 million structure on it. Let them employ 500 people. Let them generate, $100,000 a month in sales tax revenues we can use in the city to maintain something else. It's win-win, right? HEB got a new store. They saved $30 million. We got jobs. We got future. And when they're gone,
Which property that recently HEB has done, has that happened?
288 and Old Spanish Trail.
Okay,
It's under
they're in
construction.
there now.
No. We said the groundbreaking 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
We gave these, and we'll do it again with other entities that will work. Same
They're
thing.
also getting good name doing that.
Sure they are. Sure they are.
Would you say?
They're getting a
Getting
good
a good
name.
name by doing that.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna build, one project's gonna build on another.
That's
So
right.
what's gonna happen, even with these opportunity zones, you can buy shares in like a Bridgeland type development.
That's right.
And then somebody's gonna find out they're doing a big master plan community, and then they're gonna start putting in the strip centers and all that sort of stuff. All of that will work together.
And the investment is so small, the returns can really give them good, profit.
Take your duplex from here and put a duplex over here, or a fourplex, or a single family house. Build a bunch of single family houses. You can build anything.
Yeah.
You don't have to, it doesn't have to be retail. It can be retail, but it can be anything. What we don't want, and I did read a rule today, it doesn't look, our fear was the billionaires go over here, buy $1 billion worth of land, nothing gets redeveloped, they wait 10 years, sell the land, and they defer their taxes, and we didn't get anything right. Now they're not able to hold the land, you're forced to develop within 40 months.
Ah,
This is a
they're
good
just-
rule. This is a good rule. We need them to do something with these.
Cause they're making it up as they go along.
That's right. The total rules aren't done, but that rule was announced. You have
They
40
will
months.
move that opportunity somewhere else.
Yeah, we want them to build something. We need them to build something. It can be a retail, because we need retail, or it can be housing.
Is this coming off of Turner?
No,
No,
this is
it's
a federal
federal.
program. The city,
Okay,
this is the Trump, this is Donald,
This
this
is
is Kevin Brady and the Woodlands. This
Yeah.
is his idea. But it's nationwide. It's nationwide. It's a way to help wealthy people reinvest in theirs. They get the tax saving. We get the investment in areas that have not had a significant amount of private investment.
It creates jobs for the community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Housing opportunities.
So we're happy about federal opportunity zones?
Well, I think we're cautiously
Cautiously
optimistic.
optimistic.
There can be a lot of bad, and we're figuring out how to make it good. So let's accentuate the good. Someone will take advantage of it. Like that. Camden Properties is gonna go over there and they're gonna build apartments that cost $4,000 a month. And I guess that in the long run, that's gonna be fine. That's not what that neighborhood looked like, and that doesn't, you know.
Well, that'd be proximity to the medical center, wouldn't it be?
It is, yeah.
Well,
It
okay,
is.
so a lot of those people from the medical center can rent 4,000 a month. can't
Sure they can.
Okay.
You just don't want, look, if everyone came into the Heights, we tore down everything, we just put up high-end condos or 78 townhouses everywhere, it would have destroyed the fabric of this neighborhood, right? You want to find some way to preserve the character of the neighborhood, minimum lot size, let's keep working on minimum lot size, and where there are industrial tracks, go put, high-density things, and then let's find something. What we really need is more retail. We need somebody to invest in.
What kind of retail, not high-end?
Steve Random, right, Heights Mercantile, take a Pappas Brothers accounting office and turn it into that. Take the Waterworks building and turn it into Hop Daddy. Take that underserved property over there at 6th and Durham.
When you say
It's been worn
retail,
out.
do you mean restaurants too?
That could be a tattoo shop, a
Every-
candle maker, a boot maker, a leather
Yeah.
maker, a
Define,
hair,
you know?
a CrossFit, anything that creates some activity, your dog grooming place, your hair salon, a knitting area, yoga retreat, I don't care.
She's
Anything.
there.
Knitting,
Cindy is there.
Knitting, right?
That came out of your brain.
Little bookshop, little coffee
Yeah.
shop, anything. Reduce the parking regulations, which that is my initiative. So then the small little shop, I get this talk all the time. This building has 0 parking and it works just fine. For me to meet.
Yeah, should be all right now.
It's been here one I
I
can solve it just fine. I can buy 4 bungalows right here. I can bulldoze them down. I can concrete it all, and we can have ample parking. Further eroding the character of this neighborhood. This building was here first. Why the fuck should some developer tear down all these houses, increase the flooding of the neighborhood by creating a big parking lot when it fits in just fine? It fits in just fine. If you want this building to survive, you're going to have to relax the parking regulations. If not, you're gonna get CVS's everywhere. That's what
Okay,
you're
but
gonna
I can
get.
tell you, these people that live here, and you're always parking.
That right of way belongs to all of us. It doesn't
I
belong
know
to
that,
them.
Bill, but
And I'm telling you, we've got to get off of this no parking or no one parking in front of my house. It belongs to all of us. If not, you know what? I will take
I
any
said
of
the
them.
wrong thing.
I will tell you what it is. I will bulldoze this fucker down and I will put a 4-story parking garage and 17 units of high-end apartments right here. Is that what they want to live next door to? Gotta be realistic. That's what, you're gonna either get that or you're gonna have Susan parking in front of her house a little bit, which you don't park at night, you're rarely here on Saturdays and Sundays. It belongs to all of us anyway. It belongs to them. What are you gonna get? You're gonna get a parking garage in a high 17-story apartment complex. Yes, dear.
While you're on a rampage.
Yeah.
That's what I know. Before
you.
today's meeting's over, did you go last Wednesday night to hear the city planner talk about the expansion of 45 and 59?
No, but I know everything about the expansion of 45 feet. I know more than they do. What about it?
So he was talking about, so I just want to make sure that you comment on it before the meeting's over. It doesn't have to be this second.
Okay.
But, so his deal was, he's a city planner, and
Right.
unfortunately I was 10 minutes late,
That's
I don't know
that.
where. Anyhow, he was talking about how expanding it isn't gonna alleviate congestion, and apparently the Katy freeway expansion is the biggest failure in the world.
Let's go to, can you
And
go to my slide?
flooding, it's gonna increase flooding.
Well, I want to call bullshit on every one of those things right quick. And yes, if we were just building I-10 today, I think we would build it different than we built it before or whatever. I don't care about it.
You want to go to your
Wanna go to mine?
Yeah,
stuff, yeah.
just that.
Jeff Speck doesn't like cars and wants to do anything he can to keep people out of cars. And philosophically, I want to get you out of your car at Baylet, but I understand the interstate system is designed to get people not only through our city, but from A to B. Here's what I would say about 45 today. It's a piece of shit. I sit on about an hour a day getting from here to Calumet. It doesn't work. Right now, we're stuck in traffic. When it was built in 1956, it created division between neighborhoods and it created the flooding problems that we have today. So not doing anything just means we continue to flood and we continue to sit on the interstate. He doesn't want anyone in a car, and I think I applaud that mindset. But I'm in Houston, Texas, and I recognize we're going to continue to grow as a city, and as we grow as the city, we're going to have multiple modes of transportation in order to get people around, not just a car. I want to do what I can.
Flood map where it's gonna increase flooding?
I'm not called bullshit on him, and let me show you why.
North Main?
Let me show you why, because we can go to the map now. This is current segment 3. This is what we've been studying. We have a group of very smart people looking at how this can work. This is how the interstate, where it comes around this way, will come around this way, and 45 will follow I-10 and 59, and then we'll go on down to Galveston. This is the 288 sections here. And right now, it ain't that green. It's underutilized. It doesn't function well for anyone. The people in the car, it doesn't function well, and the people not in the car. We are designing a system that works, that's beautiful for the person in the car, but it's also beautiful for the people who live by it and who are adjacent to it, above it and below it. So right now, the way the system works, at 610 and 45, where you have Independence Heights, the interstate system built in 1956 floods all of these houses. It floods it now. So what we're going to do is take this area adjacent that was sleazebag hotels anyway, and we're going to widen the area of drainage, larger than it's ever been, pull that dirt up, put it over here beside the interstate, plant you a bunch of trees, so when you're driving this direction, you're now going to see a forest, which is going to be pretty for you in your car. It's going to block the sound from this neighborhood of Independence Heights over here, and it's going to remove all these houses from the floodplain and address flooding like it's never been addressed before. The building of the interstate system can solve the social problems that it created 50 and 100 years ago. So we will fix flooding, we will fix noise, we will make it safer and more pedestrian friendly to cross and better utilize that system up there at 610 and 45. Keep going south. When you look at what we're really doing though, the interstate system goes underground, below grade. This creates the Edo Cap Park, which is 3 times as large as Discovery Green. We're able to better utilize that. 100,000 people can fit there. It's part of our World Cup bid that John Arnold is leading, so we can get FIFA here in 2026 over here. But we can, the entrance to George R. Brown can now face this direction, and between Minute Maid Park, George R. Brown, Toyota Center, and Dynamo Stadium, you've now created this whole synergy over there. It's easier to get across. It's greener than ever before. We're addressing climate change. We address drainage here. It looks like this. You will cause rampant redevelopment into these areas. Keep going.
May I ask you a question? When it rains, what, and that part that goes underground, what is gonna stop the rain from falling over there on the highway?
It's supposed to go
It's called
there.
the drainage system.
It's supposed to go there.
This is the area north where 45, I-10 will come around and 59 there. This is called the North Canal. Let's just be clear, Clayton Homes and these areas that where the affordable housing flood today, they flood today. This project, go back to the bigger map, will be wide. This is this section here. We will create a new recreation area tied here, and this little section of development will remove all of downtown from the floodway, reducing the flood map by 4.5 feet, addressing every house along White Oak Bayou, all the way back to River Oaks. You will take those houses that flooded in River Oaks, and they will now no longer flood because of the Grand Canal that's over here, helping what was the area in the east side, Denver Harbor, and downtown, now no longer flood. The interstate system is helping address flooding. It's not creating flooding. Flooding already exists as a result of I-45.
When is it finished?
This is a 10-year project.
Do we
10-year
lose the
project.
bike path between the Heights and
There are-
North Beach downtown?
All these new bike paths are all being, yes, we're moving railroad lines, we're addressing, so let's go, keep going to a couple more
So they
slides.
said the bikes.
Here's the new pathways across the interstate, like if you're at 59 now and you're crossing at Benz or Calumet or in Midtown, here's a wider way, a designated walkway, a designated bikeway, a designated tree area. These areas go back to the main map.
He said the feeder was gonna be 3 lanes, 55 miles.
He's looking at the
Been
text
determined. He has never
He's
been
looking
to
at
one.
the text
I've been
document.
working on this 2 years. He flew in town for a day. 2 years, I've been working on it. Came for 1 day. He looked at a map that was 12 months old. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He made rampant statements that weren't true. Look at all of these areas where we are adding these park lights. That everywhere you see that, we're adding better connectivity for all of these neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Deck parks here tied to the Sears building and Midtown. All these areas at 59. All these areas at Deck Park at North Main. The Pierce elevator will become our high line. Show them some examples of this. Here, this is the area now. We'll better utilize the area. This is at the Pierce elevated as it comes over to Emancipation Park. You'll be able to get hiking, biking, and walking from Emancipation Park to Buffalo Bayou with a park over there. This is a recreation area underneath it. Keep going. This is the Pierce Street as we know it today. The street will get revamped, but up above it, you will have the Highline version, Pierce elevated. These are all new developments. When the right-of-way, this is 461,000 square feet of land that we will receive from TxDOT, and we'll put it back into the private sector for new development there. Here's Pierce as we know it. The Pierce elevated will be like this. This is the Metro building today, and this is 2016 Main. Retail down below. Here's your street, wider pedestrian, trees, better traffic flow. Pierce elevated up above. This walking trail will take you, I'd say, to Buffalo Bayou Park or all the way to Emancipation Avenue. We'll remove the asphalt, keep half of the street that you know today, and zigzag your way, exposing the concrete from the 1960s in relationship to how the Astrodome was built, telling the kind of story of the development of George R. Brown and all of these sort of people using this historical deal. This is up above. This is, an area. Keep going.
So why is the Katy Freeway considered?
Well, that's just a big, massive deal. I don't see any green on Katy Freeway. I don't see anybody creating those same walkways. That was a federal stimulus project. It was not TxDOT to begin with.
He was saying that expanding freeways doesn't alleviate congestion because then when it's not as congested, people will drive further, putting more cars on the road until it reaches the terrible congestion that it is, and then they'll stop traveling on it and live closer to where they work and whatnot.
So if we just take out all the interstates, we're never going to get a show. I think what and I subscribe to that philosophy for Washington Avenue and Studewood. I don't want Studewood any bigger. I want it smaller. I want it safer. I want to add a bike trail, and I think that yes, I want to incentivize a number of people not to take the interstate. But I'm realistic. People are going to go from California to Florida, and they're going to go from Galveston, the Port of Houston. We've got to get this shit out of the port and take it all the way to Canada. And they're going to do that on the interstate system. That's what it's designed for. We need to evacuate people in Galveston when there's a hurricane on the interstate system. We're going to have to get people through our city. The people in our city need to be able to look at something a little more attractive. And if it's going to be there, we need to be able to reconnect these communities the best that we can so that it's not the division that it historically has been. We are truly re-envisioning it as a place to reconnect, address flooding, address climate change, make the city more greener, make it more accessible, make it easier for people to get through it, better utilize the space underneath it for farmers markets and recreation and drainage. All of that is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Take the interstate system and make it better than it's ever been before. Reimagine how good it can be.
I love everything you're saying. So how do you keep it from getting just as congested within, I think it's 4 years, a maximum of 4 years, when it becomes easier to drive it, then more people use it until it becomes just as congested?
Because I think what you do is you build stronger neighborhoods. You do just what this has nothing to do with that. It makes taking the Heights and making it more better than ever, providing more density in the Heights, provides more things in the Heights community, so that instead of me driving to Montrose to go to a restaurant, I have 48 options in the Heights. Instead of driving to the Galleria and getting on I-10 and 610 and going over there to Neiman Marcus to buy this jacket, I can buy it at Ride 51 and Hugh Clothier, and I can buy this shirt at Man Ready, and I can buy these shirts. Find more retail options, just like we were talking about, in every individual neighborhood, so that Houstonians would not be the ones predominantly getting on the interstate system. It's people coming to Houston, for, landing at the airport and coming downtown to a convention, or getting from point A to point B. But if we're gonna do that, we're gonna have millions of cars a day. I wanna better utilize the space underneath it and above it, and I wanna better utilize the space beside it, and I want to connect these neighborhoods again through a walking trail, biking trail, and have it greener than ever before.
She did say that our lack of zoning made it easier for us to increase our mixed use, which I guess is leads to what you're talking about. So we had that going for us.
So I think it's a function of housing. You drive 40 minutes north on 45 and the houses are $1 million. You drive 40 minutes west on I-10 and the house, you can get a brand new house for $189,000. So that's what drove all that development, is it's cheaper to live out there and to drive in. And the story on 45 is totally different. And so I just, it's
the interstate system isn't for cars, it's for people. Some of those people want to walk, some of those people want to bike, some of them do want to be in a car, some of them want to utilize the space underneath it. It can fix all of it is an attempt to fix this thing. To think that we're never going to get wider interstate system probably isn't realistic. Yes, we could have flying cars, and yes, we could have trains up above it, and yes, we could all be on the bus, and those things are all good things also. But until then, I want to create a system that's greener and more connected and better utilized than ever before.
Where is he a city planner?
He is a city
Chicago,
planner.
I think.
Where is he? Yeah.
Chicago, I'm not really sure.
He's a really smart guy. I love his concept, which we use all of his concepts in the inner city for traffic reduction and mixed uses, and I love all of his concepts. To comment on,
I wanted to ask him what we're supposed to do in the summer when it's so darn hot. You can't.
yeah, what we've got's not that good. I mean, that's where you've got to go. We've got a crumbling interstate system where people are parked now on the interstate all the time. Let's get it better for everyone. The people adjacent to it, people who can cross it better than ever before, and people on the interstate system. I'm not for building huge interstate systems in the middle of the city. I do want to reduce the traffic so that people they're only going to walk to something if they have something to walk to. You can't make them walk there. They've got to have something interesting to walk to. And just assuming that we're all of a sudden going to get out and walk, we're not going to walk all the time. We're going to walk when we can, and when we can't, we're going to use other forms of transportation, some of which are a car.
So I think we missed the boat on the bypass, which other cities do. They bypass the city on the interstate, and we take the interstate through the city.
Well, they're trying to do that over on 610, right?
I know.
Which is
You can take plenty of the cities that have died because the interstate doesn't go through them anymore, and tell you that urban policy hadn't worked particularly well for a lot of places, and I know plenty of them where they would just as soon have the interstate come right up to them. It works just fine in Huntsville. We can have downtown Huntsville 4 miles from the interstate, but yeah, where Huntsville thrives the most today? Along the interstate. That's where it is.
So, the area that goes under so what's the plan to prevent people from being trapped under there in the event of a flood?
I mean, it is the major escape route for a hurricane for Galveston. It's not going to flood. We can't flood that section of the interstate and have people trapped 40 miles from here to Galveston and dying in their car from starvation. So yes, there's a plan, of course, to keep it from flooding. You can keep anything from flooding. There is a plan. I promise you, this section, Edo Path, where that is not designed to hold the water, like the street system right here is.
And what about Luz? Is it still going?
Luz is going away because of detention pond.
Do you know when that's going to happen?
They've started their acquisitions on some of these things, but I mean, I really think that's 2 to 3 years away. By 2021, there'll be full force of the rest of the acquisition up there. Segment 1, let's go back down. It's done in phases, and this whole section in orange will be done first, which is this area that gets you all the way basically to 610. So we'll start down south this direction, already doing all this field work. That one little overpass you already see is the temporary way for us to get people around. You'll do all this first, all the way up to 610 in that section. And then this is another phase, this is another phase.
So are
This
they only,
phase could be done in about 8 years.
so that, are they only gonna be focusing on the east side of 45 in that area and avoiding the, Woodland Heights and the Heights area?
The right of way doesn't get any larger than what you see today.
Okay.
There's no, from North Main south, it doesn't get any wider there.
Right.
It certainly gets wider by University of Houston downtown. And it does take a fair amount of right of way on the east side from about where Cavalcade is going up. But it doesn't take anything at Woodland Heights. Okay. we got this.
Okay.
It's a very different,
Yeah.
topic. What is the law about subletting? Like if I rent someplace, can I sublet like people do in New York?
If it's your own personal property,
No. If
No.
I'm a renter.
depends on the
Depends
terms
on
of
the
the lease that
lease.
you entered into. On our standard TREC lease, it either says it allows for subletting or not. Almost 98% of the time, the people say no.
Absolutely.
Now, so what we do is, let's say I'm in a lease, it's 12 months, I'm 6 months into it, I need out. I bring the landlord, another tenant who wants to take over my lease. They just submit their application and the landlord can allow it, doesn't prohibit it, but it doesn't make it automatic either.
It won't
Or if
sound
a
like that.
restrictive covenant says that you can't even have it in the lease, then it doesn't matter what the lease says, right?
Right.
Yeah. So
What's that?
if the deed restriction or something like that.
But if you're already, if it's leased,
If it's a.
he's asking about subleasing, something that's already leased. Can the tenant sublease it to somebody else? Not without landlord permission.
But there is no prohibition that you cannot do that under the lease contract.
There's,
You have
you
options
check
to
the
allow.
box. So in our standard lease, there's a box that you check if stuff and most people check no, knowing that it can be done, it just has to be mutually beneficial. Otherwise, the tenant that's on the lease is responsible until you relieve that tenant and take another tenant. So if the landlord can get a new tenant paying the same price or more and extend the lease for 12 months and not have to pay anything, well, sure, it would be to the landlord's advantage to go ahead and do that, especially if you have a disgruntled tenant or someone who can't pay the rent. I mean, right? But just because I enter into a lease today and 3 months into it, I get transferred to Denver, it doesn't mean that I'm automatically out of there unless I put that provision into the lease, which a lot of these, relocation companies might do. But so now I want to put the house up, house, apartment, garage apartment up for lease, knowing that it's subject to the landlord's, approval or whatever, and someone can take over that lease or enter into a new lease and let me out. I usually just pay whatever the shortage is. Okay,
All right.
how was that?
That's great.
Alrighty, bye. Thank you all.
Good meeting.
So did you stay to the end of the Jeff spec thing?